Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Before we start with the practice questions for the day, we have a quick gentle reminder. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS has launched the Mega Scholarship Program. You would be able to avail as much as 60% discount on our online classroom program as well as the offline classroom program. We have very limited number of seats. This offer will be valid only till 30th of May only. What are you waiting for? Register now to get a call back from our counselors and you would be able to avail as much as 60% discount. Let's get started and look into the first practice question. With reference to International Organization for Standardization, consider the following statement. The organization develops and publishes standardization in all technical and non-technical fields. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations created in 1947 and headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. India is a founding member of International Organization for Standardization. How many of the statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the PIB makes a reference to ISO, which is nothing but International Organization for Standardization. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, the organization develops and publishes standardization in all technical and non-technical fields. This is partially right, but also wrong as well. That is because, yes, it does develop and publish standardization in all technical and non-technical fields other than electrical and electronic engineering. So it does not take a look at electrical and electronic engineering. And when it comes to electrical and electronic engineering, it is handled by the International Electrotechnical Communication. So the first statement is wrong. When you look into the second statement, it is a specialized agency of the United Nations. No, it is not a specialized agency. It happens to be an independent, non-governmental international organization. It has a membership of as many as 168 national standard bodies as well. So this happens to be a non-governmental organization and it is not a specialized agency of the United Nations. So remember, when it comes to the International Organization for Standardization, it happens to be an independent, non-governmental international organization. The third statement is right. Yes, India is a founding member of International Organization for Standardization. So how many statements are correct? First statement is wrong. Second statement is wrong. Only third statement is right. So how many of the above statements are correct? Only one statement is right. So when we look into the International Organization for Standardization, it came into operations back in the year 1947. Yes, this statement is right. The organization was initially called as the International Federation of the National Standardizing Associations, which primarily focused on the mechanical engineering. And when it comes to India, India is a founding member, and BIS, which is nothing but Bureau of Indian Standards, happens to be the national body of India. And now if you look into the article, it makes a mention of COPOLCO, which happens to be a committee of International Organization for Standardization responsible for promoting consumer interest in the standardization process and for ensuring the standards are developed within the needs of the consumers in mind, apart from other distinct activities targeting enhanced consumer engagement. So as part of this organization, what we have is COPOLCO, which happens to be a committee on consumer policy taking into picture the consumer awareness as well as their interest. Now let's look into the next practice question. Bureau of Indian Standards is a member of which of the following international organizations? International Organization for Standardization, International Electrotechnical Commission, Pacific Area Standards Congress, South Asia Regional Standards Organization, World Standard Service Network. The answer to this is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Why have we taken this practice question? Because the very same article on the PIB also mentions about BIS being member of multiple international organizations. So BIS is actively involved in matters of international and regional standardization. It is member of ISO through the Indian National Committee, is a member of International Electrotechnical Commission. BIS is also part of Pacific Area Standards Congress, South Asian Regional Standards Organization, and is under the framework of IPSA as well. So these are some of the organizations which Bureau of Indian Standards, which happens to be a national standard body of India, is part of. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statement. Sagar Parikrama is an initiative taken by the Government of India with an aim to resolve the issues of fishers, other stakeholders, and facilitate their economic upliftment through various fishery schemes and programs. First phase of Sagar Parikrama started from Sassoon Dock, Mumbai. India is the third largest fish producing country with about 8% share in global fish production and stands second in aquaculture production. How many of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is only two. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the PIB makes a reference to Sagar Parikrama Yatra, which is why we have taken this practice question. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, Sagar Parikrama is an initiative of the Government of India, yes, with an aim to resolve the issues of fishers, other stakeholders, and facilitate their economic upliftment. What is this Sagar Parikrama? India has a long coastal side, which means we have large number of people who are employed in the fishing sector. When you look into the fishing sector, it is one of the largest employment generators as well. These people who are employed in the fishing sector will also have their own share of grievances. There are a number of programs which are initiated by the Government of India for the welfare of the fishing community. So understanding the grievances of all the stakeholders who are involved in this particular fishing sector and also making sure that these schemes ultimately reach those people is the intent of Sagar Parikrama. So this happens to be an initiative where they want to empower, make economic prosperity for people involved in the fishing sector, and as a result what we have is an awareness program that was initiated in the first phase not from Sassoon Dock, Mumbai, but in Gujarat. Where did the first phase start is what you have to put on the comment section. The third statement reads, India is the third largest fish producing country with about 8% share in global fish production and stands second in the aquaculture production. Yes, this statement is also right. Now let's look into the article. This article says fisheries sector provides livelihood, employment and entrepreneurship to more than 2.8 crore fishers and fish farmers on the primary level and several lakhs along the whole value chain. Over the last 75 years, the sector has transformed with a 22-fold increase in fish production from a mere 7.5 lakh tons in 1950-51. India's total fish production has reached a 162.48 lakh tons per annum in 2021 and 22, with a 10.34% growth in fish production in 2021 and 22 in comparison to 2020 and 21. And India today is the third largest fish producing country with about 8% share in global fish production and stands second in aquaculture production and one of the top cultured shrimps producing nation in the world. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statement. Statement 1. The total number of ministers, including the Chief Minister, in the Council of Ministers in a state shall not exceed 15% of the total strength of the Legislative Assembly of that state, but the number of ministers, including the Chief Minister in a state, shall not be less than 15. Statement 2. This provision was added by the 91st Amendment Act of 2003. Which one of the following statement is correct in respect of the above statement? The answer to this is statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to portfolio and the ministers who are appointed. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement is right, but the last part is wrong. In a state shall not be less than 12 and it is not 15. So the first statement is incorrect, but the second statement is right. Yes, the total number of ministers, including the Chief Minister in the Council of Ministers in a state, shall not exceed 15% of the total strength of the Legislative Assembly. Yes, this was introduced in the 91st Amendment Act of 2003. We have one of the important articles in the Indian Constitution, which is Article 164. What does it say? It says the Chief Minister shall be appointed by the Governor and other ministers shall be appointed by the Governor on the advice of the Chief Minister. There can be another statement which may read that the Council of Ministers will be appointed by the Chief Minister. So pay heed to it. The Chief Minister is appointed by the Governor. The Council of Ministers are also appointed by the Governor, provided that in the states of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and Odisha, there shall be a minister in charge of tribal welfare who may in addition be in charge of the welfare of scheduled castes and backward classes or any other work. So which are the four states? What we have is Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and Odisha. The total number of ministers, including the chief minister in the council of ministers in a state, shall not exceed 15% of the total number of members of the legislative assembly of that state, provided that the number of ministers, including the chief minister in a state, shall not be less than 12. So remember, it is 12 and it is not 15. Now, when you look into the council of ministers, they are collectively responsible to the legislative assembly of the state. Before a minister enters upon his office, the governor shall administer to him the oath of office. A minister who for any period of 6 consecutive months is not a member of the legislature of the state shall, at the expiration of that period, cease to be a member. These are some of the important pointers with respect to Article 164. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which one of the following countries has its own satellite navigation system? Australia, Canada, Israel, Japan. The answer to this is Japan. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2023. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to Navik. So there are some important facts that we have to remember, that Navik has as many as 7 satellites currently in the Indian navigation satellite system. This is the current position. What is the advantage of Navik? India is the only country that has regional satellite based navigation system. There are 4 global satellite based navigation system. One is the American GPS, the Russian GLONASS, then what we have the European Galileo, and finally the Chinese Beidou. India happens to be the only regional one. The others are the global. They may also ask match of the following questions as well. GPS is with respect to America, GLONASS is with respect to Russia, Galileo is with respect to Europe, and Beidou is with respect to China. These are some of the important facts that you have to remember. Why? Because UPSC in yesterday's question paper has asked such a question. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Model Prisons Act. Let us try and understand what is this topic all about. The Ministry of Home Affairs said earlier this month that it has prepared a Model Prisons Act 2023 to replace the existing 130-year-old colonial law governing prisons. The law that we have currently has a colonial imprint. We have to change with changing times. We have technology that has come into picture. We also have to be reformative in nature as well. When you look into the earlier law, it is mostly in the form of retributive deterrence form of punishment. But now what we have to move towards is to reformation and rehabilitation. It is in this particular backdrop we have to have a basic idea about different theories of punishment. We have different theories of punishment. One is what is called as retributive, second is what is called as deterrent, third is what is called as preemptive, and fourth is what is called as the reformative. So when it comes to the retributive, what exactly happens? It means with a simple concept that you have an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It is basically about vengeance. So retributive basically means that you have that set of punishment which is inflicted on a person that is more heinous in nature. So for whatever activity that person has conducted, a similar gravity punishment will be enforced on that person, which is called as retributive theory. The second is with respect to deterrence theory, which goes on to say a person may not commit the crime primarily because he will be punished. So because he'll be punished, he'll be thrown behind the bars. This makes the person not to commit the crime. So this happens to be deterrence theory. The third happens to be the preventive theory. And finally, what we have is the reformative theory, which means the person is not just punished. It basically means he is undergoing a transformation. So once he enters the prison, he is completely transformed. And once he comes back to the society, he is able to lead a fruitful life. These are the different theories of punishment. So in this particular issue, what we have is we have a colonial colonial law, which is focusing on deterrent based, it is focusing on retributive based, but what we have to move is towards the reformative based, and as a result, Model Prisons Act of 2023 has been introduced. Why has it been introduced? That is because there has been a lot of technology updates that has been taken into picture. There has been spate of killings that are taking place in couple of prisons as well. This has to be reduced. That is why it is brought into picture, added to it. When it comes to this particular law, what we have is a Pre-Independence Prisons Act of 1894, focused on keeping the criminals in custody, enforcing discipline. This had to be changed to reformative mode, and as a result, what we have is the introduction of the Model Prisons Act of 2023. And do note, when it comes to this particular act, it is not binding on the states, primarily because it is a subject in the state list. This means that the management and administration of all the prisons is with the state government, which alone is competent to make appropriate legislative provisions. But the center is giving them the idea as to how they can frame these rules. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So, this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.